Hello, everyone. Hope everybody's doing okay. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Rochelle Frybren, and I am the moderator for today's webinar, Wireless Troubleshooting Using Zyxel Management Solutions. I would like to bring onto the podium Andrew Quellar, Zyxel's Product Marketing Manager. Andrew has been part of the Zyxel team for over a decade. But before we continue, I'd like to point out some housekeeping. During the webinar, you'll see three options at the bottom: raising your hand, a chat field, and a Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A and not the chat field. Andrew and I will be moderating these questions and answering them at the end of the webinar. Also, this webinar will be recorded for your future needs. I will now turn this mic to Andrew. Take it away, Andrew.
Thanks, Rochelle. Okay, let's begin. Wireless troubleshooting with Zyxel. A quick overview of the agenda. We'll review a common wireless setup with mesh and the obstacles that are included with that, and then the various tools we have available to identify potential issues and problems. Okay, so we'll begin by briefly covering a couple of issues that are presented with the latest offerings of wireless gateways. Our Zyxel gateways are no different. We followed the industry standards and implemented a mesh setup by default. So that means a single SSID for both the 2.4 and 5G radios, which of course introduces steering and roaming features. Okay, so as I mentioned, steering and roaming features. If wireless clients support these features, it's definitely beneficial for them to be moved or steered, whether it's for load balancing purposes or for optimal signal, whatever the case may be. The mesh system will steer and provide suggestions as needed. So this can also create some disturbances for clients when they're steered or switched between gateways and extenders if one is implemented. All right. Now, roaming from place to place, due to the larger coverage distance of the 2.4G radio compared to 5G, we see roaming much more frequently, especially with the single SSID setup. So in most cases, you won't even notice that the switch is made when you're steered from the 5G to the 2.4 when you're walking between or away from the gateway. But as we continue with remote work from home, we're seeing a lot more activity in regard to Wi-Fi clients changing locations and really not sitting stationary as much. So more moving around, whether it's taking a Zoom call from different locations, even from bed. There's various things, new items that come to play with working from home. All right. Now, in some cases, we'll encounter sticky clients where they won't move or steer when suggested. This is especially prevalent with iOS devices, where they'll use their internal algorithm to either stay with their preferred network or move as they see fit. But also with some clients that don't support the roaming and steering features, they can also be sticky clients where they don't listen to the steering messages or refuse to move. So sometimes the mesh system will try to offload or balance clients, but since the client itself is already working perfectly on whatever band or SSID they're on, they'll remain there and ignore our messages. Okay. Next up, placement. Placement of your gateway, placement of your extender. We can't forget how important this is. We don't want to be installing the routers or extenders on the floor. We really want to avoid cabinets, closets, and preferably up high on a shelf or on a bookcase, your desk, somewhere where you can get the optimal signal throughout the home. All right. And finally, briefly, we'll cover the potential obstacles, in the home that would create problems for the wireless signal. For the most part, most homes have minimal impact on the signal, drywall, doors, etc. But down towards the bottom of this list, you'll see things like concrete bricks, metals, and even water will definitely impact your wireless performance. Just some things to consider, to keep in mind if there's continuous reports of wireless trouble. Sometimes it's worth investigating and looking into, what is going on even further with the home build itself. All right, so those are just a few of the common issues we come across with wireless in general. But now we'll move on to our solutions. First up, we have our MPro Mesh app, which works with our AX gateways. Now, this is a subscriber-facing app that allows for end users to manage their wireless network locally or even remotely. Very simple. That provides an overview of the connected devices and a few other minor features and functions. Okay, so here's a quick snap of the app dashboard. So you'll see the main Wi-Fi network, the number of connected devices, various menu options, the ability to toggle the guest wireless on and off. We can also configure the wireless settings here, push them to the device, update them. The big key here is that we have the ability to view and see the wireless network password, which is a huge call generator. Just being able to see and provide and share that with other users in the home so they can connect easily is a great advantage for this app. We also offer this app for free. It's set up by the serial number and creating a free account. Okay, and we can dig in a bit deeper on the app and we can see the connected devices. And here, customers will be able to easily and quickly identify if any clients are suffering, if they have poor signal, if they have a bad connection, with the quick and easy to see the green, amber, and red being bad. Good, of course, is green. And that'll be next to each wireless client that is connected to the network. All right. Now, finally, the app does also offer some self-help troubleshooting steps, some minor, pretty common issues. For the wireless side, it's the inability to connect to the wireless network, and does offer some suggestions before the customer has to call into support. So giving them an opportunity to kind of resolve things on their own before making that call. All right, next up, we'll move on to our web GUI. So we've optimized our web GUI so that it can be used with any browser, any OS, any screen size, whether it's your phone, your tablet, so you can quickly and easily configure whatever's needed. As you can see, it kind of snaps in pretty well to whatever screen size. Now, we've included a connectivity table to display both the wireless and wired devices connected to the gateway or extender as well. It'll be listed here. It'll display the relevant wireless client details, the IP, the MAC address, but more importantly, it's going to show you which radio the client is associated with and which Wi-Fi type, whether it's ACAX, Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi 6, so you can guarantee or immediately notice if something's connected at the wrong speed or on the wrong connection type. If it's an AX device and it's only connecting at AC speeds, something like that. All right. We've also included a Wi-Fi site survey in our web GUI. Now, this will scan the wireless channels for you. You can initiate it on either the 2.4 or the 5G radio to perform a wireless scan. So you get a picture of neighboring APs and if they may be interfering with what your device channel is operating on. So it'll count everything it can detect around it and display it here in a little chart. So useful, to determine if there is any overlapping interfering channels or APs nearby, and possibly switching to a cleaner channel. All right. Related to the last slide about the site survey, especially in an MDU or condos, townhomes where you have shared walls where there's a definite potential for interference from neighboring APs. We also have the ability to turn down the output power on our radios in order to minimize interference and optimize the wireless performance within your walls. So it may sound counterproductive, but in some cases it may be beneficial to turn that down so that you're not overlapping or those creating conflicts with those other neighboring APs. Okay. A bit deeper into our web interface, we have some under our system monitor, we do offer additional tables, reference tables, tracking tables. This one is the WLAN station status. Now this again is going to give you even more detailed information from the connectivity table. It's going to show you the connection rate of the clients, the signal, the SNR, and we do grade each client connection. So you see on the right side, the level. Now that 5 is the best, indicating that you have an optimal signal, and 1 being the worst. But this table is very useful for determining where devices are connected and their signal and connection rate. So we'll be able to determine that you have poor signal, we can take action from there. Continuing with additional monitoring capabilities, we move on to our steering status page. Now this similar keeps a record of all the clients, but also shows if they're associated to where they're associated to, whether that's possibly the gateway or an extender where it's associated. We also keep track of the signal here and the average transmission and receive rates. So it's a bit more detailed on the steering page, but on top of that, down at the bottom, we do track whether a steering attempt is successful or fails. So very useful to determine if a customer reports a client dropping, something along those lines, we can come in here and take a look and see if it was steered. That could explain some of the behavior. If there's a quick or brief disconnect where it's pushed or moved to a different AP. All right, and then really quick, here's just a quick guide for signal strength. The lower the value, the better. And we can also see when we get towards the edge, down below, we will definitely start to experience packet loss, and eventually the signal or the quality of the connection is just simply unusable. But yeah. So for the most part, I mean, if you're doing those high latency things, you're going to want a very good to excellent signal. But for everything else, your daily browsing, email, stuff like that, the amber or yellow area around 70 dBm is sufficient. Okay, now we'll move on to remote management and TR69, which our devices, we try to follow all of the broadband TR69 standards and currently offer support for both the TR98 and TR181 data models. And we have TR369 in the works. So we're always looking to follow suit and support the broadband forum standards. And here you see we try to interop with any and all ACS vendors. So we do not offer our own ACS for customers, but we do partner and interop with really anyone who's willing, especially from the customer perspective, to offer coverage for whatever you see fit. Okay, now here's a sample of what we can pull from an ACS and how it can be displayed, and very, very similar to our web GUI. But from this side, it makes it much easier for providers to access and view without having to go all the way into logging into our device remotely to check out these things, which you can pull from TR69. So like I mentioned, very similar to our web GUI, you'll see the signal strength, the IP, the MAC address, the band, whether 5G, 2.4, and the standard. You'll see there NAC. Okay. And we can also take a closer look at each client individually, as well as access a detailed history of when the client has associated, anytime it's disconnected, and its signal over time. So the definite benefit to having, the TR69 or that is really the historical data, is collecting that information. So you have references, and you can check for patterns. There's a lot more you can do when you have that relevant historical data. Now, similar to our web GUI again, we can also perform a wireless site survey triggered from the ACS, as well as recommend a better channel to use. So again, pretty much everything we can do from our GUI, we can do from the ACS and more. So and it offers providers the ability to do without having to set up roam management on our devices. You just, once the device checks in, we're ready to go. And finally, we'll do a brief overview of Plume and OpenSync. So we've embedded the Plume agent into our firmware so that once it's applied to our gateway, it automatically connects to the cloud. And since all Plume services are on the cloud, it doesn't impact the overall performance of our gateway. So it can perform optimally wireless, wired, throughput-wise, everything. Okay, so here we see a snapshot, bird's eye view of a home network. And really, it almost looks like a blueprint, because it sort of displays how and where everything's connected, almost where everything's connected, really, based on the signal, things like that. But we can also see whether it's connected to the gateway, extender, and again, which radio, whether it's 2.4 or 5G. Okay, so here we see the client device list, and this is just a table that we can actually use to manipulate, narrow down, or you can even sort by signal strength. So you can pull the poor signal strength devices up on the top, but it also displays nicely the where it's connected, how it's connected, all that fun stuff. So instead of that map view, it's more just a detailed list view, but it gives us more to work with. And again, we can go further and dig deeper into those clients on a per client basis and see a detailed view of the device history and performance. So the thing here that's nice as well is it does track performance, whether that's throughput, things like that. So we can see like how much data usage this client is doing over time. We can identify peak times, things like that. But the key here again is all that historical data being used to identify problems, patterns, and then we can work to address them. Next up on the Plume side, we have the home health check, which will, everything like I mentioned, all that historical data, everything about the client's information, it's all analyzed and reported here, where you can then work proactively to address problems before you generate any calls. So ideally, yeah, so we can try to take care of any issues before they come up. All right. On the Plume side, they also offer a customer-facing app, their portal basically, which gives them full control of their network, whether it's enabling guest Wi-Fi, retrieving that wireless password, making changes, and other tools to help identify trouble. So they also track, throughput, things like that. So, and it displays it very nicely, so it's easy to see and easy to use, and not too much to get confused about. Okay, so with Plume, as I mentioned, we've embedded that agent into our firmware, so it'll automatically go to the cloud. But we also have the ability to bounce back and forth. So for whatever reason, if customer decides they no longer want to use OpenSync, we can always roll back to our Zyxel firmware and the traditional ACS TR69 support. So definite benefit. It gives you, gives you the best of both worlds, where adding OpenSync allows us to offer Plume's cloud managed Wi-Fi capabilities and add them into our ecosystem, as I mentioned, while still offering the traditional benefits of TR69. So definitely important if you're making that change over to OpenSync and you still want to use your existing backend TR69, TR143, speed testing, things like that. That's actually it. I have spoken too quickly.
Thank you, Andrew. That was very informative. Let's see here who has a question. How much this history does it save on clients? That's the question. How much history does it save on clients?
I think that depends. So if you're talking on the cloud on TR69, where it's almost unlimited because of the storage space, especially when you're talking cloud storage and a cloud ACS where they have almost unlimited storage. So when it comes to that on the TR69 or the OpenSync side, it's almost, I'd say, unlimited. But if we're talking on our web interface, it's definitely memory limited. I can definitely follow up and get the exact number of entries that it'll store or the exact details that it'll store.
Great. All right. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, no. I was just going to say because the memory is fixed on our devices.
Great. All right. Next question. I have one device that can't seem to connect. What can I do?
Okay. All right. So, I mean, this comes down to basic checks, right? So we want to verify that you're connecting to the appropriate SSID, phrase share key. Always make sure you're connecting to the right device. Ideally, we'd want to make sure that other devices can connect, that it's capable of, so that the gateway is capable and visible, everything's working there. So another client always helps. Sometimes it's possible that clients, they just simply can't add another preferred network. So in some cases, we've seen removing any saved or preferred networks that are no longer used can help. On the client side, also refreshing, disable, and then enable the Wi-Fi, the classic, turn it on and off again. And like I said, I always suggest we start with restarting the client first, especially if it's only one client that's affected. If it were multiple, we'd want to look towards maybe the gateway or the AP side, but with just a one-off, we want to look at that client specifically. We also want to consider, if possible, moving closer to the extender of the gateway. And of course, finally, it could possibly be the client device's software. Especially with legacy devices, when they attempt to connect to a new Wi-Fi 6 gateway, we may need to update their software so that they're able to see and associate with the new technology.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Next question. Is there a way in the web interface to kick a sticky client or a client with poor performance? Another way of asking this, is it possible to force a client to reassociate from the web interface?
That's a very good question. Unfortunately, there's not. That's a bit of a, I'd say, there's pros and cons to that, right? I mean, of course, we want to kick that client so it gets to either a better, a different, the better performing band, whether it's 2.4 or 5G. But I mean, the downside is you're forcing that deassociation, at least from a provider's perspective. I don't think you want to implement any disconnections, you know, especially if they're in the middle of something. So it's a very, very tricky situation to be in.
I see. All right. Next question. When will Plume be rolled out for Zyxel 3510 routers?
So we finalized everything with on the Plume side. We're just going through our final checks, and we're expecting that firmware to be ready any day now, actually.
Wonderful. All right. Next question. How can I get gateway sample units with Plume?
We do offer evaluation units. So getting in contact with our sales rep, contacting us at broadband@zyxel.com, definitely, and our website as well. We do have the ability to request a sample there to test with and get that process rolling. So
Great. All right. Last but not the least, do Zyxel gateways support CAF2 requirements for latency and speed testing?
yes, we do. We have worked with several ACS vendors to iron out a lot of the issues and the latency and speed issues, of course, to meet those requirements, the reporting requirements. So we definitely, and we will work with you in any way, in any capacity we can, to get that accomplished if we do run into any issues.
All right, I guess, Andrew, that would be it. Do you have anything to add before we wrap up this webinar?
No, that's about it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to all our attendees, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. You guys have a great weekend. Goodbye.